A wedding can mean wildly different things to different people. To me, my wedding day was an opportunity to summon my loved ones to serve as a captive audience for the culmination of 18 months of Olympic-level arts and crafts. Let's start first with the invitations. A few years ago, I happened upon a craft that involved resin, color, and a heat gun to make a wave design. First time I tried it out, it turned out quite ugly like this, but I kept iterating on my technique and eventually I got it to look like this. I found these chopping boards absolutely mesmerizing. Looking at them felt like quenching thirst. This color and the gloss and the layers and dimension and the sunlight, like an aqua gummy bear that you want to jump into a vat of and eat your way out of. It took all of 30 seconds of brainstorming invitation ideas for the crafty imp on my shoulder to whisper, "Make 200 of these, why don't ya?" And suddenly, I found myself taking over our entire apartment for this operation. I made these across a few months in maybe 3 big batches, each one with 2 layers of resin. I made the first layer clear, like a thin bit of water washing up on the sand would be, and then for the second, I added the blue coloring. The delicious froth at the edges is created by adding a thin strip of resin mixed with white pigment to the edge of the pour and then blowing it with a heat gun. Because the white coloring changes the viscosity of the resin, when you blow it out, it naturally splits and causes this effect that's called lacing. With so many variables in how I poured, the way the pigment laced, how much blue color I mixed in, every single card turned out unique. To see them all together, just these tiny little rectangles of sparkling beaches that could be their own little worlds, the apartment was a huge mess, but also a feast for the eyes. This whole thing just goes to show how you never really know what people are up to in their homes. For example, here, try to guess what's going on in my house. In fact, pause and drop a comment if you'd like. See, when you order a laser engraver from a shady website by sorting the price from low to high, the engraver you receive will be missing some features, primarily safety features. This one's instructions paradoxically say to never leave the laser unattended, but also to not be in the same room as it. I made do with some goggles and the dog camera. I knew this laser was living on borrowed time from the moment it got out of the box, so I tried to milk it for all it was worth. Here's a card I made for my mom using my flower drawings. I have some leftover cards that I've used for various things, like this QR code to connect to Wi-Fi at home, and this little frame with Jaime swimming. I just love to look at this design. It reminds me that the ocean exists and it makes me feel awash with peace. I don't know that any other occasion than my wedding would have prompted me to go on such a spree, so I'm really glad that it gave me the excuse to. Sometimes I'll go to friends' home and I'll see the invitation displayed somewhere and it makes me so happy to have been able to directly share my favorite form of art with them. Number 2 was my substitute for flowers. We didn't have fresh flowers at the wedding because that would have cost more than we were willing to spend on the entire wedding itself, and they would have been replacing the opportunity to do something so much more creative and longer lasting. Another craft I'd been enjoying before starting to plan the wedding was making these everlasting flower arrangements. I'd seen these gorgeous stained glass ones on Etsy and I figured out a way to do it with resin and wire. This is the first bouquet I made and I was delighted to find that because the wire I used was a little too thin, they even kind of behaved like little flowers, wilting over the course of a few days under the weight of the flower part and needing to be straightened back out and refreshed. This wedding showed me that anything I can do once, I can do infinitely. So once again, I commandeered every surface of our home to make these flowers, which would eventually serve as the table centerpieces. The process is simple. I just bent black wire into a few different shapes, laid them flat on some parchment paper, and I poured colored resin into the openings. Then I grouped the shapes into nice little diverse bouquets and I attached them to little wire stems using a blob of black resin. And finally, I drew little designs on them with a Sharpie and I was done. Since we were flying to San Juan with very little baggage allowance, it was nice that they could sit tightly bunched up like this in the suitcase and that the pliable wire made it so that on the day of the wedding, I could unfurl them to create this voluminous burst of color that I much prefer to fresh flowers. I found these way more interesting and, well, fresh. And in fact, I kept assembling this whole setup at home in the lead up to our trip just to admire them. I don't even have any on hand anymore because they're all hopefully in the homes of friends and family living out a happy retirement on their windowsills. I'll show you how the final setup turned out at the wedding once I give you a little more context on the next few items. Next up are the menu cards and that thingy to collect people's autographs. One November night, the month before our wedding, passers-by who caught a glimpse into our home through the window might have wondered what we were doing here atop the bed in full wedding attire taking photos on selfie timer. That is not how the kids are taking their wedding portraits these days, and rest assured this is not how we were doing it either. What we were up to was actually far more insidious. See, it had occurred to us that we could mess with the very fabric of space-time. We decided that we wanted our menu cards and that signy autograph thing to feature photos of us at the venue in our wedding outfits. But that presented the minor problem of the fact that those materials had to be produced weeks before those photos could possibly exist. So I used a little potion that I like to call Photoshop to insert ourselves into someone else's wedding pictures at the same venue. And for the guest signing thing, oh wait, this is actually a useful tip, one second. Due to the aforementioned luxury travel option we chose to the wedding, we needed everything that we brought with us to be very collapsible and sturdy. So I packed a bunch of these blank balsa squares, and then for the center, we splurged on this really cool metal print from Nation's Photo Lab. So the image is printed on a metal sheet that is very durable, and the color has a really nice depth to it. For this image, I took this illustration that I found among many other beautiful ones on this page, and I used my magic potion to turn it into nighttime. This was 4 years ago, and it wasn't yet so easy to do this day-to-night transformation. I had to do the whole recoloring and turn on all these lights manually. Okay, well, I hate this frame anyway. And in the 7th hour of this kind of endeavor, when you have 400 other things to do, you start to wonder why you keep getting yourself into these kinds of situations, but you assure yourself that it'll be worth it. And it always is. And to bring it back, I just disassembled these easily and framed them when I got home. The framing clearly was a fail. I'm gonna redo it better later. Later is my favorite time. The next item is this sort of puzzle picture book that we placed at each person's place setting. This is called a Hexaflexagon. I learned about it eons ago from the OG nerdy YouTuber Byheart. Basically a long strip of paper that's folded into a bunch of triangles and then assembled in such a way that allows you to flex through it like this and reveal a whole bunch of unique faces. This is one that I made to document the various stages of renovation of our house. The living room when we first saw it, all the way through everything to what it looks like today. There's the kitchen. This is for when it's fully complete. There's the pool, from horrific sludge all the way to delicious blue. Ghastly bedroom, less ghastly. Ghastly bedroom, less ghastly. Here's a video where I talk about how to make these sturdy versions. I think they make for a really good gift. I went crazy during this wedding because any art form that I previously enjoyed, I made myself do 100 to 200 times for this. When you go to watch the photos video that I mentioned, you'll see that making an album in the way that I showed you is such a painstaking process, and it requires manually aligning all the pictures, gluing them together, and I needed to figure out a way to make this scale. I made so many prototypes of this. I played around with hexaflexagons, heptahexaflexagons. I thought about printing on sticker paper, about creating blank hexaflexagons and then sticking the photos on after, about taking all those 30 failed attempts and just shoving them into a blender and drinking them so that I could rid myself of the idea. And then I stopped being dramatic and I realized that if I just tweak this design a little bit and I managed to do a double-sided print where the front and back aligned perfectly, then all that was left to do was cut out the shape and fold. But I was blasting on all cylinders and I ran out of time. So the day before the wedding, I lured all my dear friends over under the false pretense of mirth and merriment, and instead I forced them to help me fold them all. But thanks to them, each table setting had on it this hexaflexagon which you could pinch and flip through the photos of some of our homes, that's Spain, Kenya, etc. However, we gave no explanation of what on earth this was. So I think most people had no idea there were even pictures contained in them, except for the brave few who ripped entirely through them like bears. And this DIY is one I share not because it was a huge hit at the wedding, at least not in the way that I executed it, but because I'm just always deeply committed to sharing the gospel of hexaflexagons. And in that way, I'm carrying out my true life's purpose and doing here in this video what I wasn't necessarily able to do at the wedding. Number God knows is the seating chart. When designing our seating chart, here are 3 things we were not concerned with. Number 1, ease of use. Number 2, seriousness. And number 3, hygiene. More on that later. You already know our major constraint was luggage, so the seating chart also needed to be something that we could collapse fully and then reassemble easily and deploy on the wedding day. If you remember, we were trying to squeeze as much juice out of this laser before its planned obsolescence. Plus we had plenty of balsa left over from the guest book signy thing, so we decided to break the whole design into little squares that could be easily stacked together, engrave them, and then assemble it into the nice huge display once we got there. I found these stickers that kind of looked like the wall tiles at the venue, and this is how I mocked it up. We had spent months brewing up the most perfect seating arrangement. Every night, like witchy puppeteers, throwing in qualities about our friends and family who didn't know each other that could result in a beautiful connection. We were conjuring up memories of these folks that we didn't even know we had. Oh, this cousin and this roommate once had a great aunt who studied abroad in Cameroon. quality fodder for conversation. This childhood friend and this dear colleague independently expressed fear of opening a dumpster lid at night for fear of a raccoon springing out and giving them rabies. That's something they'll bond over. Ooh, these two friends will definitely fall in love at our wedding because we all very well know that they have the ability to scream along to the lyrics of Big Sean's I Don't F With You, but they have the wisdom to know better than to do so. And they will name their child Maeve to thank us. But that wasn't enough for the seating chart. We decided to give it a theme, and that theme would be media that we really enjoyed. So this is what I was saying about not being concerned about ease of use, because this is how people had to find themselves. Because now instead of table numbers, we had these icons with people's names that mapped to the centerpiece of each table. And of course, each menu card also contained the icon specific to that table. The night before the wedding, I found a big piece of cardboard inside the dumpster near our Airbnb. I cut it to size and I stuck the stickers and engraved squares onto it, and there it was, assembled in 10 minutes. Okay, 20 minutes including the dumpster dive. Feel free to guess in the comments which show or movie each of the icons represent. Next, I want to tell you about the final piece of the table setup, which is also my favorite thing. I've talked your ear off about this thick, vibrant wool fabric from Kenya called shukas. They're used as clothing and picnic blankets and whatever this is. And then I used them to make this flower bag and a jacket. And I finally exhausted my supply on this massive detachable couch wall with a matching pendant lamp. But there's another very important Kenyan fabric that I haven't been giving the spotlight that it deserves. And it's called kikoi. Kikois are made of cotton, usually more lightweight with more delicate lines and patterns. They're wonderful as scarves. People make clothes out of them. They're also really good as lightweight towels because they're so absorbent. Fabric is the fabric of my life. So of course kikois and shukas were present at my wedding. I've been living in the US for over a decade now, but I go home at least once a year. And whenever I do, boy do I go on a shopping rampage. And the one right before my wedding was just spectacularly excessive. The huge batch of shukas that I used for the couch wall originally served as the tablecloths for the cocktail tables at the wedding. And the kikois enter the picture as napkins, but there's a story behind them, and I want to use this story to paint you a little picture of Indian Kenyan culture, okay? We were in Kenya the week before our wedding. As you know, our wedding was all the way over in Puerto Rico, but the Kenya trip happened because both my best friend and my cousin were having their weddings in Nairobi that week. It was an amazing time. Imagine 12 consecutive morning, midday, and night events in a 4-day period, attending 2 parallel Indian weddings with 8-hour jet lag, but also doing last-minute week before prep for your own extremely DIY wedding, which is happening in a different third location 7,000 miles away. We needed 120 napkins. We could have just rented napkins, but I have this condition called culo inquieto, and I just couldn't resist the opportunity to do something awesome. So when we landed in Nairobi, we bought 12 full-size kikois like this and needed to chop and hem each one into 10 pieces. I considered doing this myself, feverishly but earnestly divvying up my remaining hours until the wedding, thinking, okay, during one of the receptions, if I snuck into the bathroom and I chopped up the fabrics for a bit, and then if they let me take a sewing machine back with me on the 15-hour flight back to the US, and then I skip my own wedding event to finish up the hemming, then I could maybe make enough so that at least all the guests have a wedding, and then me and Jaime and our nuclear family, we could just wipe our hands on our clothes. This is the thinking of a delirious person. So these were some really busy days, okay? Here's a highlight reel of what was happening during that 10-day period. I was busy basking in my best friend's bridal beauty. I had to visit all my favorite signs. There was so much driving and driving and driving to reach all these beautiful venues that could contain 1,000 guests. They had very handsome welcome committees. I had nefarious plots to horrify friends that I needed to enact. I was not ready. I was freaking out. I hadn't had time to reckon with the honor of my beautiful friend allowing me to squawk her down the aisle. After leaving Nairobi, when we got to Puerto Rico, we needed to stock our wedding venue. We needed to rescue my dad from the weight of multiple hats and the Caribbean heat. Now you know about the saga of tricking my beloved college a cappella group into folding 120 emergency hexaflexagons. Also in this frame are 3 of the most talented musicians I know. Please go listen to these absolute bangers by my friends Doyle and Chef and Omkar. Oh my god, what else? We needed to recover from the life-altering event of our friends surprising us with a concert happening in San Juan 3 days before the wedding. We went to see La Oreja de Van Gogh, which is one of the most famous and era-spanning bands in the world. So like Beyonce or Beatles to Spanish kids like Jaime and my sister-in-law. And you can see them just losing their minds here, belting out all these songs that they grew up with. But you'll notice that our friends here, who would normally be freaking out as well, are looking kind of focused, kind of sneaky even, maybe like they're up to something. Well, they had orchestrated this moment that they knew was coming up any second.
Que viva el amor, claro que sí. Porque nos ha llegado una historia. Y es que hoy hay dos personas entre el público, Jaime y Tas. Bueno, espero que sí, que me estéis escuchando, porque nos han contado qué cosas de la vida hoy Jaime y Tas se han pasado aquí.
As if this wasn't crazy enough, our friend also got us invited to the backstage area after the show, and we will never let Jaime forget how feral he was as we were leaving. I can't play you the song that they dedicated to us because I'm afraid of copyright, but I did make one of these ting 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 things for Jaime, and hopefully it shows you what a sweet melody it is. Oh god, it's not gonna stop. I'm gonna go lock it in the closet. So you can see, as much as I wanted to, I just did not have time to cut out these napkins. God, I can still hear it. It's haunting me. Our only hope was to get these 120 emergency napkins sewn in Kenya before leaving. So we go to this uncle's sewing shop. My dad's strategy is to induce chaos. First, he starts trying things on. The uncle is caught off guard, like, oh my god, what's happening? Let me lower my mask. Then Jaime starts talking about ace of snakes.
An ace up your sleeve, but in this case it's a
Then my dad is like, we need 120 napkins. Uncle is like, I'll need 2 weeks to do this. My dad is like, our flight is tomorrow, please. She's studying so hard in America. Mind you, I graduated like 6 years ago. Uncle's like, convincing, but it'll be hard to do it in one night. My dad is like, you can do it. Take out your calculator. Let's divide out your next 24 hours. Uncle is completely worn down. He says, okay, fine, I'll do it for you. And that's just how it goes. The napkins were ready well in time for our flight. And this is how everything turned out for the wedding.
1, 2, 3.
Quiero expresar con mi canto, lleno de paz y amistad, quiero decir.
Not caught on camera is the humiliating scene after the wedding where we're stuffing 120 dirty napkins into our suitcase. But now we have this endless well of them. My mom has a set, Jaime's parents have a set. We use them every single day, and these extras I'm planning to make into a curtain over there. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I can be a real wasteful little piece of shit. But recapping all these projects for you, I'm so proud of how much of the stuff we've gotten to keep carrying with us and giving new life to. These beaded Kenyan mats I also got during that pre-wedding trip to round out the centerpiece and to add some sparkle, and now we use them all the time as placemats at home. These light up flowers for the cocktail tables ended up in our living room at the old place and in the kitchen here for a while. Finally, before telling you about this jewelry that I made, I have to tell you about the outfits, which I did buy. 4 years later, the way that my crafting disease has progressed, there's no way I wouldn't be sewing, crocheting, hell, felting that dress out of Maeve's fur. Really, I'm kidding. I'm not. But before I tell you about them, I'm in the mood to give you a brief general overview of South Asian outfits. So here is South Asian Outfits 101. The sari. The typical sari drape is one where most of the fabric is pleated into a skirt and the remaining, also pleated, goes across your torso and then is flung over your shoulder to fly free behind you like a cape. Here's a sari I wore recently with a really cool play on that style. We learned it from Tia Bhuva and she calls it the infinity drape because there are a few additional pleats added at the end and it's tucked in so that you can't tell when the sari ends and where it begins. With one more clever twist of the fabric, I'm realizing I could even fashion this into a Mobius drape. I've only ever worn saris for fancy occasions, but they're so versatile. My grandma used to do everything in a sari, including sleep. The lenga is a voluminous skirt coupled with a top, and a chunni or dupatta is the scarf that you can sling over in many different ways. The sharara is flared pants with a longer tunic over it like this. There are so many styles and variations. South Asian fashion is so rich and innovative, and I'm realizing I would love to make a whole dedicated video just ogling with you at all the different beautiful designs I've been saving over the years. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that. First outfit I ordered was this red number with a cape. The color and sleeves felt so flamenco, which was fitting for our wedding. I love the red and the embroidery and that I could split up these components into different outfits because I'm always thinking of the future guys, always trying to get my money's worth. And then a few months later, my breath caught in my throat when I was doing my regular instinctual online outfit prowling, and I came across this beauty. And it was this image that sold me, even though I didn't end up convincing Jaime to wear the matching suit. Okay, fine, since you insist, I'll put it on. This is my dress to end all dresses, and this is why I put class in session a minute ago, okay? Let's review what we learned so that you can see that this outfit is somehow everything all at once. A sari, as you remember, has a pleated sash that is flung over the shoulder. A lehenga is a crop top with a voluminous flared skirt. A sharara is typically a longer top coupled with pants. What does that have to do with this? Aha! Fooled you! The ordering process would have given some of y'all hives. I just sent my measurements to a random man on WhatsApp in the form of dimly lit photos of me wrapping my appendages and lengths with measuring tape, and a few months later a DHL package arrived so tightly packed that it was the size of a small toaster, and out sprung this beautiful outfit. No need to iron, no structural integrity to need to respect when stuffing it in the luggage alongside the seating chart and napkins and resin flowers and tablecloths, plus it fit me like a glove. So I wore this for the ceremony and then I changed it to the other one for the reception. This one could really use an ironing. I looked far and wide for jewelry and I hated everything I could find, so I turned to my beloved trusty trade school, youtube.com, and I found these beautiful beaded jewelry tutorials, including this fan pattern that was made for the red outfit. So I grabbed some super cheap beads from the craft store and I used that fan motif to create a few layouts in differing levels of gaudiness, and I finally settled on this.
Sweet sensations, hot temptations.
For the white one, I made this set. Oh, I forgot about a whole other outfit. I love the fit and the silhouette of this outfit, but I didn't love so much how low quality the print was. I made this matching set to go with it, but have since lost one of the earrings. Please let me know if you find it somewhere. Here is the final DIY of the wedding, my magnum opus, the album. After the wedding was over, I felt so listless to have in the rear view this period of such creativity and excitement barreling towards the event, and I tried to fill the void with other crafts, turning Maeve into a lion, forcing Jaime to make keychains for my colleagues, making my nails grow in the dark, cleaning even when it didn't seem that necessary, living dangerously and resigning to a virtual world of cheap thrills. I took this photo of my drone-wielding brother. It's a masterpiece if I do say so myself. And eventually I got so desperate that I got a gym membership, but I promptly canceled it 2 months later, don't worry. Turns out I just needed one more project to give me closure. And creating this album across many months after the wedding helped me extend that joy and creativity and relive all these beautiful moments. This is a pop-up album. It's made exclusively using USPS boxes and construction paper. In that other video, I talk more about the details of how I made it. Here's a tour of the album. These are photos from our trips to San Juan before the wedding, our engagement at the Gallery Inn, which is a heavily bird-themed hotel. This photo of our Halloween costume that year made it into the album not because it had much to do with the wedding, but because we caused such a ruckus about town with our costumes when we were playfully reenacting our engagement that passers-by thought it was real, and many hearts were warmed imagining this alternative ending for Batman and the Joker. And look at me. Here are some sweet moments getting ready. My dear friend learned of her role of hairstylist mere moments before her duties were to commence. And unfortunately, I don't have a photo of my friend Priyanka giving my mom a haircut as we were stepping out the door. Look, now you know all these characters. Menu card, Hexaflexagon invitation. Here's one of us from the welcome event with some flowers from those cocktail table bouquets. One napkin I snagged here to use as backdrop for me having my mehndi done by this super talented artist. Of course you remember La Oreja de Van Gogh, crazy to believe even now. This album is getting a bit rough for wear after all these years. I'm gonna need to do some renovations soon. These are just different meals and hangouts we had with friends throughout those few days. Viejo San Juan is less than 1 square mile in size, and we had around 120 people come. So it was just wild to be bopping around on foot all day, spotting a childhood friend from Nairobi on one side of the street, and then my great uncle on the other side, and there's my mom popping out of a grocery store, and I look up and our beloved neighbors are dancing in their balcony. It was absolutely surreal, and we're still not quite sure it even happened. This one you've got to smack it a little bit to get it to shut. Honestly, we felt like such clowns on the streets, twirling and prancing in our fancy dress. I was so excited to meet the photographer, Camille Fons, whose work I had been drooling over for months.
I'm so excited to meet you.
Hi.
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 You make these? Yeah. Dude, the beads were 70% off.
Here's the ceremony area. This is how it looked earlier that day without any decorations. Utterly stunning and in need of zero adornment. I learned through some stalking of the history of this venue that there used to be a swimming pool in this courtyard. Can you imagine how dreamy that must have been? That is the one way this could have been improved, if everyone had been exactly here but in a pool with floaties. I love this series of photos here, and especially to accuse Jaime of blocking me on purpose. I wanted this pop-up animation to feel like arms opening up for a hug to match what's represented here. Here we are hugging my dear friend, the most talented singer in the world, after she serenaded us and left nary a dry eye in the house. Our first dance, in which Jaime was the picture of swag and grace, and I looked like those inflatable tubes outside of car dealerships. These flaps open into chaos to represent the end of the night, and I'll leave you with that. I have always oscillated wildly between nothing's that serious, nothing matters, and the future of humanity hinges on my next action. 4 years ago, planning our wedding helped me to finally strike a balance between those two, and I try to carry the mindset that I picked up from this planning process with me in everything I've done since. The mindset is, for things that are technically unnecessary, like having a wedding, decorating your house, giving gifts, such arenas are the perfect avenue to indulge a greedy, delusional, creative spirit without fear of real consequences or judgment. I could punctuate each of all of these DIYs with, and nobody would have cared if I hadn't, and it would be true, but it's equally true that each of these items live on in my mind and in my home even 4 years later, and they bring us such joy every time we come across them, and I know they always will. So that's a reminder to myself that whenever there's an opportunity to be creative, I should always turn the effort all the way up, break the dial even, because the investment, like that effort, it will always pay back.